Um, so good morning, everyone. Today we are joined by Wizzie Brown, Senior Extension Program Specialist in Integrated Pest Management with the Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service. Wizzie earned her bachelor's in entomology from Ohio State and her master's in entomology from Texas A&M. She got here as fast as she could, folks. She's a board certified entomologist specializing in urban pests and brings both field and structural pest control experience to her work. Her research and outreach focus on some of the toughest pests we face, like fire ants, bedbugs, and termites. Please help me welcome Wizzie Brown as she shares how to identify pests with confidence.
All right. Thank you. Oh, I go here.
This is a reminder.
Okay. I'm turning off my video because it distracts me if I see myself. All right. So we're going to talk about insect identification, which this is kind of an important thing to do. And the first thing that I want to put up there for you is if you are having issues identifying something, I am here as a resource for y'all. I know not everybody has entomologists or whatever on staff with their company. That is part of my job. So please copy my information that is on the last slide and feel free to email me pictures and I am happy to help you guys out. But we're going to start off by giving you a cheat. There is an application that you can get on your phone that is called iNaturalist. And I don't know how many people on here are on iNaturalist, but if you create an account, you can use it to identify not only insects, but snakes and other reptiles, plants, mammals, all sorts of stuff. And this is kind of when you open up the app, we're starting on the left-hand screen and going from there. So it'll bring up your account and it goes into my observations. So what you would do is click on the plus sign down at the bottom right-hand corner, and then the middle screen will pop up and it gives you the option. So you can either take a photo, or if you have taken a photo previously and you want to know what something is, you can go into choose image. So we're going to go through both of those. So we're starting off with the take the photo. And you can see I took a crappy photo. I mean, that was not a great photo for identification because it is out of focus. So once you take the photo, you're going to click OK, or if it's a crappy photo and you want to retake it, you can click on retry. But once you do that, that loads your photo into the observation screen. What you would do from there is click on this "What did you see?" section. And what it does is it takes your location information, which I blocked that out. It takes that location information and it takes your picture and it will give you a list of things that it might possibly be based on the image and what is typically found in the area where the photo is from. So if somebody sends you a photo, because I get that a lot, if they send me a photo, I may need to go in and change the location to some other part. Like if they're, because I'm in the Austin area, but if somebody sends me something from Houston, I'll change it to the Houston area. So once you click on what did you see, you get this nice little screen in the middle where it pops up suggestions. And it usually starts off with the genus, and then it may give you actual species that you're dealing with. And in this case, it was a fiery skipper. So I clicked on a fiery skipper, and then that will bring you up information about that. And that information that it's bringing up there is going to be information that is from Wikipedia, which isn't the best resource, but you know, we kind of go with what we can, right? So the other option is the choosing the image. So we're still main screen, click on the plus. But this one, we're going to choose the image instead of taking a photo. So let's say I took a photo of something, you know, 3 days ago. And now I'm like, oh, what was that? So choose my image, and then you can go into the gallery or into your files, and you're going to select which picture you want them to identify. And so again, same thing, click on what did you see, and it will bring up your list. And in this case, this is one of the Harmonia or Asian ladybird beetles. So that is just something that you can use as a cheat where you don't have to know everything in your brain. The thing that you need to keep in mind when you are using these sorts of applications is they're not always going to be 100% correct. And sometimes they are wildly incorrect. So you need to think about it and be logical and say, does this actually make sense with the other information that I'm giving? Because it's just essentially looking at that picture, comparing it to a bunch of other images that it has in its algorithm, and saying, okay, here are some ideas. But you, as the human on the ground, you need to look at those suggestions and say, okay, is this really what this could be, or is it completely off base? And what I try to tell people to do is, if you are using this, use this as another tool in the toolbox. It's not the gospel. We're not saying this is what it is exactly. It's always this is possibly what this could be. And then that can lead you to searching out more information, to figuring out things that you need to know. All right, so we're going to get into basic identification. And when we're looking at classification of insects and other arthropods, so arthropods have an exoskeleton and insects are within that. It's broken down. So they are animals. The arthropods are the larger classification. So that includes insects and the arachnids, which are spiders, scorpions, mites, ticks. But it also includes things like crustaceans, which would be crabs, lobster, shrimp, but also things like the roly-polies or pillbugs. Those are terrestrial crustaceans. We also have the myriapods, which are things like centipedes and millipedes in the phylum Arthropoda. But when we're looking at the insects, that is a class level. And what we're looking at today is a little bit more specific. So we're going to be talking about insect orders. So that's going to give you a basis of what kind of insects we're dealing with. So we're going to start off talking about insects that have a gradual life cycle. That means that they have 3 life stages. They have an egg stage, they have several nymphal stages, and then they have the adult stage. When we're looking at insects that have a gradual metamorphosis, the immature stages look very similar to the adults, but they don't have fully developed wings. And so if you find an immature stage, you might be able to be like, oh, okay, that's going to turn into blah, 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 because they look very similar. So on this slide at the bottom, you can see those are chinch bugs. So you can see the egg on the far left, and then you have the adults on the far right, and then the nymphs are going. The nymphs of insects that have gradual metamorphosis, they are going to have wing pads that develop as they go through those different stages. Our first one is going to be our fire brats and silverfish. These are going to have elongated carrot-shaped bodies that are somewhat flattened. And silverfish are going to be that grayish silver color. Fire brats are going to be that kind of mottled brown color. These are going to have long antennae, and they are going to have three tails that come off of the tip of their abdomen. Immatures look exactly like adults because these never have wings. These are always going to be wingless in both the immature and the adult stages. And they can do damage, and they'll be found in the similar areas, both the immatures and the adults. And for these, they're going to feed on generally starchy materials, but they can be in different locations. With firebrats, they're going to be in warmer, drier locations, whereas the silverfish are going to be in kind of damp or dank locations. Order Ephemeroptera. Usually I don't include these in presentations, but I have been getting a fair amount of calls on mayflies this year, and it's just weird. But I wanted to include them because this might be one that you don't necessarily see all the time, but when you do have these, if you look at the upper right-hand picture there, there can be a lot of them, and they can be very startling for customers. So mayflies are going to have an elongated body. They are soft and squishy. I mean, they still have an exoskeleton, but that exoskeleton isn't really hard or anything. At the tip of the abdomen, they are also going to have tails, and their tail number can range from being 2 tails to sometimes having 3 tails. And then the other thing that can vary is the number of wings that they have. If you look at the two adults that I have on the slide there, those both have 2 pair of wings, but the front wings are much, much larger than the hind wings. There are some species of mayflies that those hind wings are severely reduced. The other thing to notice about the adults is the way that they sit. Their body kind of curves when they're sitting like that, and they will use their second and third pair of legs to actually sit on whatever surface that they're sitting on. And then their front pair of legs, they tend to hold up in front of their body. It's kind of classic mayfly sitting. The adults of mayflies do not have functional mouth parts. They are reduced. The adults of them don't live very long. Some of them only live literally 30 minutes. But there are others that live several hours, and then, the longest lived ones, it's only, several days. So the adults don't feed, and their purpose is essentially emerging out, finding a mate, mating, laying eggs, and then they die. The immature stages are going to be in water, which that is a important biological thing to know, because if you're having massive numbers of mayflies in an area, there has to be water somewhere nearby that they are emerging out of. And the immature stages, they do have chewing mouth parts. They're going to feed on like algae and detritus and stuff that is in the water. Orthoptera are going to be our grasshoppers, katydids, and crickets. These are going to have immatures that look very similar to the adults, but they don't have those fully developed wings yet. And they are going to have hind legs that are enlarged and specialized for jumping. There are other insects that have that, but with these ones, that's kind of like a very obvious thing to see. They are also going to have a pronotum that extends back over the abdomen, and it protects the base of the wing. The pronotum is a shield-shaped structure that is on the thorax that is kind of a hardened protective covering. These are going to have chewing mouth parts, both immatures and adults. And when we're looking at our grasshoppers versus our crickets versus our katydids, Grasshoppers, which is the top picture there, they are going to have relatively short antennae. They're not going to be longer than the body or extend over the body. Crickets, when you look at them, we're going to look at the tip of the abdomen. Crickets are going to have those two appendages that come off of the abdomen. Those are called circi. And so if you see something with large jumping legs and they have circi, that is going to be a cricket. And then the katydid, which we see on the bottom, those are also known as longhorned grasshoppers. And essentially that is referring to their antennae, and their antennae are going to be very elongated and thin. Dermaptera are the earwigs. These are going to have elongated, slender, flattened bodies. They do have shortened front wings that are kind of leathery. They're somewhat hardened, but not like a beetle. And they actually do have membranous hind wings. Bye, kiddo. And with the hind wings, I have never, like in real life, I have never seen a earwig extend its hind wings and fly. They are capable of doing that, or some of them are capable of doing that. But I've only seen it like on videos. And it's rather fascinating to watch that, because if you see in the, two, like the upper left-hand picture and the lower right-hand picture, you can see those shortened front wings. And it's like they just have these huge wings that come out from there that allow them to fly. And just thinking about how they fold those wings up and get them underneath those front wings when they land is just kind of mind-boggling to me. Again, immatures, like you see in the upper right-hand corner, they are going to look similar to the adults, but they don't have those fully developed wings. The big characteristic for earwigs are the circi. Again, those are going to be those appendages that come off of the tip of the abdomen. And for earwigs, those are going to be hardened, and they're kind of like forceps. They will actually use those when they are grabbing, like if they're grabbing other insects or whatever, they'll use them for that. A lot of people think that they're going to use those to pinch us. They could, I guess, but it's not really going to do anything because those aren't attached to venom glands. These are a lot of times going to be feeding on decaying vegetation. They can get on seedlings sometimes and cause damage. But usually for pest control people, these are insects that tend to wander in at certain times of the year into homes, and they are pretty much a nuisance pest. This was another one that I was getting a lot of calls on, and I was actually seeing them in my house. They would pop up every now and then. But if you think about that flattened body, it makes it really easy for them to kind of squeeze in around doors or windows and cracks and crevices. But once they're inside the home, they're really not going to be causing damage or anything, because they're mostly going to be outside feeding on stuff. Inside, they're not going to really have much to eat unless there's potted plants or something. All right, my absolute favorite group of insects is the Blatodia. These are the cockroaches, which are my fave, and the termites. Termites used to be in their own order, but there was a reclassification done, and termites are now within the order Blatodia with the cockroaches. So essentially, if you're looking at the overarching characteristic of the order, yeah, they have a gradual metamorphosis and they have chewing mouth parts. Because if you look at a cockroach and you look at termites, they really don't look anything alike. So when we separate those out and we look at the superfamilies Blabberoidea and Blatoidea, which are the cockroach part of the order, Cockroaches are going to have that oval shaped body. They have a large pronotum or shield shaped structure on the thorax. The head is going to be deflected downward and it's protected by that pronotum. Very long antennae. They have legs that are specialized for running. And then cockroaches are also going to have prominent cerci that come off of the tip of the abdomen. Essentially, everything about a cockroach is specialized for them to run. So those cerci are able to pick up air currents. So if you're trying to step on one, they can feel that and they can take off running. Their legs are specialized for running. They are low to the ground with kind of a flattened body that allow them to get into small spaces. They're just really, really cool insects. I absolutely love them. So these are the common cockroaches that you will come across. The two on the left-hand side are larger cockroach species. We have the smoky brown on the top and the American cockroach on the bottom. The one that is on the right-hand side is the smaller cockroach. So that's the German cockroach. They only get about half an inch. And those ones are typically going to be indoor cockroaches. German cockroaches are going to be that tan color. They have the two racing stripes on the pronotum. There are cockroaches that we have that will get outside that look like German cockroaches, but they are not. German cockroaches are not able to fly, but those other cockroaches can. And those are either Asian cockroaches, or there's another one known as a field cockroach or sometimes a Vega cockroach. When we look at the smoky brown and the American cockroaches, smoky browns are going to be that kind of dark brownish, almost mahogany color. And those are going to be 3/4 of an inch to an inch in size when they are adults, and they are not able to fly. Those are typically going to be usually compost piles, leaf litter, tree holes, things like that. And then we have our friend, the American cockroach, on the bottom left-hand side. That is the cockroach that probably makes everybody freaked out by cockroaches because they are the ones that tend to fly at your head. They are capable of flying. They can get about an inch to an inch and a half. And when I'm talking about how big cockroaches are, I'm talking about from the head to the tip of the wings. I'm not measuring antennae or anything in there. So cockroaches, the American cockroaches are some of our larger ones that we have in Texas. They're going to be a reddish brown color, and then they have that kind of tannish creamy color on that pronotum or shield-shaped structure. Both the smoky brown and Americans are typically found outdoors. If you're finding them inside, they are probably coming in from outside. And you really want to target and talk to your customers about blocking and excluding the home so they can't get in. Now, if you're finding immatures of those inside, that means that they dropped an egg case someplace and the babies are there. But with cockroaches, we have some really wonderful cockroach baits. If you are doing a cockroach treatment, make sure that you are targeting those bait areas where the cockroaches are going to be hiding. They are nocturnal and they are going to come out at night to feed. So you want to work with your customers, making sure that they're reducing other food sources so it's forcing those cockroaches to eat the bait products. You can also do targeted crack and crevice treatments with residual sprays or dusts, but you do not want to use those in the same areas that you are applying the bait material. So make sure that you're not mixing those together because you don't want to contaminate your baits. All right, the other part of the Blatodia now are our the Isoptera or our termites. And this could be, both cockroaches and termites could be their own presentation. But termites are going to be a true social insect. So they have a caste system, they have overlapping generations, they have cooperative care of the young. And depending on which ones you're seeing, you may see them looking different. So we have our queen and kings on the left-hand side there, workers, which are usually what customers give us for identification, and that doesn't help. If you want to identify what kind of termites you have, you need reproductives or you need the soldiers. So the soldiers are going to have that hardened head capsule. So this shows you that we have multiple castes within the Isoptera. The workers are going to do the work of the colony. So they're foraging for food. They're taking care of the king and queen. They're building the colony, all that. Soldiers are there for defense and for protection. The king and queen and the winged reproductives, their jobs are, well, the winged reproductives just hang out until it's their time to emerge and mate and start new colonies. But the king and queen are going to be in there, and their job is mating and then for the queen laying eggs. So the big question is, a lot of times, is this an ant or is this a termite? So when we're looking at this, you need to pay attention to certain things. Usually when we have termite swarmers emerging, we also tend to have ant swarmers emerging because that's going to be depending on species. In the spring, typically, that's when we have our largest population of reproductives emerging of both ants and termites. So in the spring, warm days after a usually heavy rainfall event, but I've also seen it happen when somebody leaves their sprinkler on way too long, and that stimulates that water or moisture event. And we can have these coming out. And you can have ant swarmers, you can have termite swarmers, you can have both in the same area at the same time. We also, just so you know, because we're getting to that time of year, we also have some termites, definitely ants that can swarm in the fall, but we also have some termites that can swarm in the fall, late summer into fall, and those are usually our agricultural or desert termites. Typically, they don't get on structures. I have seen them on houses before, but they're typically not as an issue as our subterranean termites that we have. But it's always a good idea if you have those termites swarming in the fall to collect samples and just double check to make sure that they are the agricultural termites and not something funky going on. So when we're looking at our ants and termites, the first thing to look at are going to be the antennae. Ant swarmer antennae are going to be elbowed. They have that constriction, or not constriction, the bent part. So the base of that antennae is called a pedicel, and then they have the long kind of branches coming off of that, and that causes that elbowed shape. With termite antennae, theirs just looks like a little tiny string of pearls or beads that are going off from their head. So their antennae are more straightened, not elbowed. The other thing to look for is going to be the constriction between the thorax, or not the constriction, the connection between the thorax and the abdomen. When we're looking at ants, those are going to be constricted. So where the thorax and abdomen are joined, there is going to be a indentation, or what we call a wasp waist. Termites, on the other hand, are going to be broadly joined between the thorax and the abdomen. And then the last thing that you can look for if you have them still on the specimen, are the wings. Both ant and termite swarmers, after they have flown out of the colony and they have found a mate and, did their thing, when they come down to the ground, they are going to shed those wings. And so, depending on when you catch them or when your customer catches them, they might have those wings, they might not. So, you might be able to use those as a characteristic, but if they don't have them, then you really can't. But if you're looking at an ant swarmer that has wings, the front wings are going to be larger than the hind wings. If you're looking at termite swarmers, their wings are going to be of similar size and shape. All right, our next order is going to be for all of those people that have the L and O category. But it's good for y'all to know that too, because you guys will sometimes deal with these and get questions, and I'll talk specifically about what you can be expecting soon. This is the order Hemiptera, and these have been divided into various suborders. So we have the Heteroptera, which is on the upper left-hand corner. Those are known as our true bugs. So things like stink bugs, kissing bugs, bed bugs would be in that category as well. We also have leaf-footed bugs, assassin bugs, and there's a whole bunch of stuff in there. But those typically have a shaped body, or kind of triangular shape on their back. And if you look at the front wings, they have what's called a hemielytra. The front part of the wing is hardened, and then that back part of the wing is going to be membranous. But then we also have those weird cases like the bed bugs that, since they are ectoparasites and live in close association to their host, they don't have wings as adults. So there's always those weird exceptions to the rule. To the bottom picture, the left-hand side there, that is the suborder Achinorhyncha. Those are going to be our hoppers. So leaf hoppers, plant hoppers, tree hoppers, frog hoppers, spittlebugs are in there. And we also have our cicadas. Those are going to have wings in the adult stage. The immature stages do not have wings. And when you look at the wings of those insects, they are going to be held, what we say, roof-like over the body, but it is a simple roof where it's just kind of like a triangular shape. All of these insects that are on this slide have piercing, sucking mouth parts. So everybody in the order Hemiptera, piercing, sucking mouth parts, but they can feed on different things. So obviously bed bugs feed on blood. Kissing bugs are another one. They feed on blood of mammals. But with assassin bugs, they're going to feed on other arthropods and can be considered beneficial. But we have things like cicadas and leafhoppers that will feed on plants, and they will suck the juices out of fruits or foliage or things like that. The upper right-hand corner is going to be the suborder Sternorhyncha, and these are commonly called our plant parasitic insects. So these are a lot of those small, soft-bodied, kind of weird insects. And the one that you see in the picture there, that is a crepe myrtle bark scale. So if you are somebody with an L&O license, and you go to a customer who has crepe myrtles, take a look at their trees and look for those little white scales on the bark of the trunk and branches. And if you see those are crepe myrtle bark scales. So they are becoming more and more common across Texas, and they are going to, they cause really messy, nasty grossness with our crepe myrtles. because they are honeydew producers, and that honeydew will go onto the plant, and that can then grow a fungus known as sooty mold, which turns the branches and trunks black. And so it just kind of makes it look gross, and it will cause issues with the tree. I mean, it's probably not going to kill things, but it doesn't help them. Other things that are in this are things like aphids, whiteflies, obviously scale insects that we have in there. So those are a lot of times going to be very small and sometimes difficult to see. A lot of those the stages that you see are going to be wingless. With aphids, scale insects, and mealybugs, the only ones that have wings for those groups are going to be the males. So if you see winged aphids, those are males. If you see winged scale insects, those are males. Um, so like I said, most of these are going to be outside, but with bed bugs, those will be indoors and you might have to deal with those. Kissing bugs can also come inside, and those are going to be a big deal as well because they can feed on blood of humans and our companion animals, as well as other mammals, birds, and reptiles. And so those are also with kissing bugs, they are also capable of vectoring a disease known as Chagas disease. If you've been paying attention to the news the past couple of months, or not the past couple of months, the past couple of weeks, the kissing bugs have been in the news. So if you want more information about that, shoot me an email. I just recorded a webinar on kissing bugs and Chagas last week, and I can send you a link to that if you're interested. The one that you need to be paying attention to or looking for coming up are the hackberry psyllids. Those are going to be in the suborder Achinorhyncha. They're a type of psyllid or hopper, and they are those little tiny insects. They feed on hackberry seeds, but they will crawl in around doors and windows, and they kind of collect on the windowsills of people's homes inside. And there can be hundreds of them overnight that appear. And it gets very distressing for customers. And the thing is, they don't do any harm. Like I said, they feed on hackberries, so it's not that they're going to be causing problems if they come indoors, but it can be upsetting when you have hundreds of insects that collect on your windowsill each night. You can recommend that your customers vacuum them up when they do get inside. They might need to repair screens or put a finer mesh screen on their window. It may be that they need to replace weather stripping around doors and windows. And then you could do treatments on possibly the screens or around doors and windows to help reduce those hackberry psyllids that collect. That's just one of those things that commonly kind of crops up in the fall of Texas. It's just one of those insects, kind of like, the field crickets that we get sporadically in late summer into early fall. All right, there's some common of the Hemiptera, the Heteropteras. So most of them are going to be outdoors, but in the upper right-hand corner, we do have the bed bugs as well that you guys are probably very familiar with. So that can definitely be a concern. So there's the hemielytra that I was talking about. So it is the front part of the wing that is hardened, and then that back part of the wing is going to be membranous. And that kind of causes that adult insect that has wings to have that triangular shape on their body. But bed bugs, if we go back, bed bugs don't have that because they don't have any wings in the adult stage. If we look at our cicada here, that will give you the idea of what I mean when I say they're tent-like or roof-like over their body. They do have 4 wings, but they are folded over the abdomen kind of at angle. And then here are some of our common plant parasitic insects. Like I said, these are going to be very small and they can be difficult to see on the plant if you're looking at it from a distance. So if you do have an LNO and you're looking for these type of insects, a lot of times you're going to need to look on the undersurface of the leaves or along the stems of the plants. And you might need like a zoom function on your phone or a good hand lens or something to see detail. Another one that can be a problem outdoors are the Thysanoptera. These are known as the thrips, and these are very small insects. Um, some of them, some species will have wings. If they do, they're fringed, like you see in that bottom left-hand picture. And you can see how tiny they are in relation to that coin there in the photo. So these are, the size of, if not smaller than a fungus gnat. So very, very tiny. And these have rasping, sucking mouth parts. They usually feed on plants. We do have some that are predatory, but these are capable, if they land on people, they will stab them with their mouth parts. And some people can be sensitive to that and they might feel it. They might get some reddening and itching in the area. And why I put this in here, even though it's generally a landscape pest, I have had people that have brought fresh cut flowers inside, either that they have brought in from their garden or that they have purchased at the store that have had thrips on them, and they are feeling that they're being bitten by something and they don't know what it is. And it's actually thrips that are coming from those fresh cut flowers. So this is one of those, if you have the person saying, I'm being bitten by something, um, sometimes they're imagining that, but sometimes there's actually real problems. This is one of those, along with like bird or rodent mites or sosids or springtails or something. This is something that could actually be causing an issue. So when I actually find something, when somebody's saying they're being bitten by something, I get excited because it's easier to deal with an insect or other arthropod pests than dealing with somebody who is just imagining things. All right, the order Cicodia. This has another one that has been revamped. This used to be just the book lice and bark lice, but the parasitic lice have also been moved into this group. You, as pest control professionals, you do not deal with the human or animal lice. So if somebody says, my kid has head lice, what do I do? You need to send them to a medical professional. We cannot deal with insects that are on a person. So that is beyond our bailiwick. But you can deal with things that are in the environment, and that would be leading us to the book lice and bark lice. So bark lice tend to be not so much an issue because they're outdoors. They feed on mold and lichen that builds up on plants like tree bark. And the thing is, and I've gotten a lot of calls about these recently, like in the past month, where people have found trees that are covered with webbing and they're wondering what's going on. And it's actually bark lice, and they're there. They create webbing over the tree. They'll eat whatever they're doing. And then when they're done, they'll clean up after themselves and go about their merry way. What you all would be messing with are the upper right-hand picture, which are going to be the book lice. And nope, these are typically going to be small, soft-bodied insects. They have long, skinny antennae. And with the book lice, they are generally wingless. Some of the bark lice will have wings. But the big thing for me, the way that I look for book lice, is they have what is called an enlarged clypeus. The clypeus is a plate that's kind of on the front of the face. And for me, it looks like somebody punched them in the face and they've just got this big old fat lip on the front of their face. So you can kind of see that on the front of that insect there. It's got the two little beady eyes, and then it looks like they got punched, and that big old section in the front is all swollen up. But these are going to be very small insects. Usually they are associated with areas of moisture. So if I find book lice in somebody's house on sticky traps, I know that there is a moisture problem somewhere nearby. And they might not say, I mean, a lot of times people are like, well, I don't have a moisture problem. And then it ends up that they have a water leak in the wall or something. You know, if you're finding book lice, there is a moisture problem somewhere. All right, we're moving into our group with complete or holometabolists. These are going to have 4 life stages. So egg, several larval stages, a pupal stage, which is essentially a transformation stage for them, and then the adult stage. Our first group is our largest order. This are the beetles, which are in the order Coleoptera. These are going to have chewing mouth parts in both the adult and the immature stages. And the big characteristic for beetles is that their front pair of wings do not have any veins in them. They are hardened into what is called an elytra. They might have grooves or lines or pits or something like that, but they do not have any wing venation in those. The hind wings are going to actually be membranous, and those beetles that are capable of flying, they only use their hind wings to fly. Beetles are extremely diverse. We have some that are as large as, the head of a pin to ones that are probably as large as your hand. We can find them indoors. We can find them outdoors. They feed on a wide variety of stuff, anything from dung beetles eating fecal material to carrion beetles eating dead animals, to stored product pests that are eating stored grains, to leaf feeding beetles that are going to feed on living plants. I mean, they're just all over the place, very diverse. But when you're looking for them, you're looking for that elytra. The Neuroptera, these ones you're probably not necessarily going to get as a problem per se, but you might get questions about them. Usually the ones that people ask about are the one in the upper right-hand corner. Those are the green lacewings, and those tend to come in to porch lights at night, so people get curious about them. These are going to have elongated abdomens. They have lacy or kind of net-like wings, long antennae, and usually these are beneficial. A lot of these are going to be predatory in either the larval stage or the adult stage, or sometimes both. The Hymenoptera, these are the bees, wasps, ants, and sawflies. And the majority of these are going to have a pinched waist, so it's going to be constricted between the thorax and the abdomen. They're going to have chewing mouth parts in both the adult and the immature stages. And with sawflies, which you see on the bottom right-hand corner, they are kind of the outlier when we look at these. They're going to have a broadly joined thorax and abdomen, but generally you're not going to deal with sawflies because that's not what people are worried about. Or if people see sawflies, they don't know what they are. The big concern when we're dealing with bees, wasps, and ants are that a lot of them are going to be capable of stinging. Honeybees, which you see in the upper left-hand corner, they are only capable of stinging you one time because they have a barbed stinger, so it gets stuck in you. But when we are looking at ants or wasps, they do not have that barbed stinger, so they are capable of stinging you multiple times. And not all ants are going to be capable of stinging. Probably the one that we are most aware of and concerned with are the red imported fire ants. I'm sure everyone on here knows that they are capable of stinging and has experienced that firsthand. So we mentioned earlier about ants and termites and how to tell them apart. The other question that I sometimes get is ant swarmers versus wasps, because we do have some ant swarmers that can be fairly sizable. Leafcutter ants, their swarmers are huge, absolutely huge. And a lot of people may mistake those for some type of a wasp. But when we are looking at our ants and our wasps, what we're looking for, again, we're looking at the antennae. If it's going to have those elbowed antennae, like the one on the left-hand side, that is going to be an ant reproductive. When we look at wasps, they generally don't have those elbowed antennae. Theirs is more straightened. And, you may need to know that information, you may not. The other thing that I do want to mention with ant swarmers, there are no keys for identifying ant swarmers. For some reason, nobody has come up with one at this point in time. I've been doing this for, I don't know, probably 25 years now. So I have a fair amount of experience identifying ant swarmers, and I know a lot of them in my area of Texas. So I can identify some of them just because I know. But if you're finding ant swarmers and you don't know what it is, it's always a good idea to look in that area and see what worker ants you have wandering around. And that can give you a key as to what type of swarmer you might be dealing with. Lepidoptera. These are going to be our butterflies, moths, and skippers. These are going to have their bodies and wings covered with scales. They have a curled proboscis in the adult stage that will allow them to feed on nectar. The immature stages are going to be caterpillars, and those are going to have chewing mouth parts. So the ones that you see on this slide here, these are going to be outdoors, so they're generally not a problem. But we do have things like the Indian meal moth. We have the Anguimoy green moth. Those are going to be stored product pests, and you might deal with them in some of your accounts. Of course, those are going to be much smaller. They tend not to have as bright of coloration as some of the stuff that's on this slide, but they're still going to have the same general characteristics. Siphonaptera are the fleas. These are going to be wingless. They are laterally flattened, which means that they're squished up and down. And essentially everything about a flea is making it able to run through the hairs on an animal's body. So it is squished so it can fit through those hairs. The hairs or spines that they have on their body are going to be directed backward, so it's not catching on anything. The adult fleas are going to be ectoparasites. They live on their host. When they mate and lay eggs, they will either kick those eggs off of the host, or as that host is moving around the environment, the eggs get dislodged and they fall down into the grass if they're outside, or in the carpeting if they're inside the home. The larvae that hatch out of the eggs, which you see on the bottom left there, they are going to be in the environment. They're not growing and living on the adult animal. With the larvae, they are going to be that worm-like larvae, and they feed on organic matter, but they also need blood. So adult fleas feed on blood that is on the animal. They will partially digest that blood, and so when they poop, their fecal material has some of that blood in it. And that is what we as humans commonly call flea dirt. So if you've ever had an animal that has fleas and you use a flea comb on it, that little black speckly stuff that looks like dirt, that is actually flea poop. And when the animal moves around, that again falls into the environment. And so that is how the larvae feed on blood. They'll feed on that. So Generally, we're not looking for the larvae, but that is what you want to treat. So when you're treating for fleas, you need to treat the animal as well as the environment. And that might be indoors, that might be outdoors, that might be both. So comprehensive flea control. This is another one that you could do a entire presentation on just fleas. The Diptera are going to be the flies, mosquitoes, and midges. And mouth parts can vary widely with the flies. They are going to feed and be in a wide variety of environments. Mosquitoes are a type of dipteran, so piercing, sucking mouth parts there. The adult mosquitoes feed on nectar, and they are pollinators, but the female mosquitoes are going to need a blood meal to produce eggs. So they're the ones that are going to bite mammals or birds or reptiles to get blood. And they are also the ones that are capable of vectoring a variety of diseases. The big characteristic for flies are that they have only one pair of wings. The second pair of wings have been reduced into what are called halteres, which you see in the picture there. And those are used to help the insect balance as they are flying around. So if you cut off one of those halteres, the insect is just going to fly in circles. So it's kind of like a gyroscope on a helicopter. So some resources, if you want them, like I said, iNaturalist or Seek, which is created by iNaturalist. I would recommend that you download that, check it out, try it out, and maybe use that as a tool to kind of help you with stuff. The other resource that you have, of course, is me. So please feel free to take my information down. And if you have questions, shoot me an email. I am more than happy to help y'all out. All right. Are there any questions? There's nothing in chat. So if anybody has a question, if you need to ask, just lay it on me.
Wizzie, did you see the question about the two apps from Kevin?
I did not know.
Okay, so he asked it. He said he sees two apps, iNaturalist and iNaturalist Classic. Which one are you using?
I didn't even know that there's an iNaturalist Classic, so I'm going to say that I just use iNaturalist.
Okay. Everyone, I've unmuted you, so if you have any questions at all, just unmute yourself and please feel free to ask Wizzie a question.
So I actually downloaded that app while you were speaking. And you could also long press an image on your iPhone if you have an iPhone. And
Yes.
that is moderately accurate.
Yeah, and with all of these, because if you don't have an iPhone and you have an Android or something, there is also Google Seek, which is similar, or not Google Seek, Google Lens, that you can search for stuff. But again, you need to use it as a tool, not a this is absolutely what this is. Because I have searched sometimes and it's like wildly incorrect as to what it actually is versus what it's telling me it is. The app is iNaturalist.
All right. Anybody have any questions? All right, I
Well,
think
listen,
they're
thank you
in
so
all
much
and
for
it's
jumping
covered.
in. That was great. Like super interesting, the connection, and most of us know these connections, but the connection between wildly different insects. So it's always interesting to hear those and to see the comparisons and differences of things that are in the same, termites and cockroaches being related and so
Yeah.